All aboard! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, football fans of all ages, I am Beast Mike. You have now arrived at my train of thought. I'm also going to invite some hockey fans of all ages on my train of thought because these power rankings are going to be a little different. I'm going to talk about both football and hockey and, in my own way, preview the NHL season with all 32 teams in their respective league and obviously talk about the 32 teams in the NFL. Some of the geographics don't really flow right. And in the case of Ohio, I didn't give either Ohio team Columbus, but I made it make some sort of sense for rivalry purposes. You'll understand once I get there. Obviously, these tiers are going to be with the NFL teams in mind, not necessarily the NHL ones. Gives a good sense of randomness for the hockey stuff. Let's get to the Fulton, Kentucky zombie tier. New York Jets, lots of pain. Now, obviously, the Islanders are going to be paired with them. And when it comes to the Islanders, I will say it's kind of a sink or swim year for Patrick Roy, right? Where the Islanders do have the number one overall pick, yet they do have some decent talent. And it feels like with the new regime change, it's probably inevitable that Patrick Roy gets axed. And when it comes to their future, they should be okay with Schaefer and obviously still Matt Barzal and company, but probably still not a playoff team. The Jets are nowhere near such a thing, as they are all kinds of bad, and you have negative 10 net passing yards in a game. It's not great. You have less sacks or more sacks given up than Justin Fields' Jets' first downs. It's also not great. Garrett Wilson also being out for a couple weeks now with the leg injury. Oof. This could be a brutal few weeks for the Jets. Tennessee, struggling in Nashville. Never mind the fact that the Nashville Predators were an abject disaster last season, where they won the 24 off season with Stamkos and a bunch of other signings, and then absolutely cratered, where nothing went right, and they are now stuck with a bunch of bad contracts. Poor UC Zaros, he's a really good goalie. But I don't know what you do in Nashville when it comes to the Predators. I'm not sure what you do in Nashville when it comes to the Titans, obviously Tennessee. And they just fired Brian Callahan. They had to do that. And now you're better off getting a GM that can competently, or getting a head coach, I should say, that can competently say, all right, Cam Ward's our guy. This is how we're going to build around Cam Ward. Again, that roster's bare. And at least in this Tennessee case, you kind of have an almost clean slate. Poor Jeffrey Simmons. He needs to get out of there ASAP, though. Cleveland. The droughts continue. Now, with Cleveland, I'll get to them in a second when it comes to who I paired them with. When it comes to the Browns, that was pretty brutal. And that was a really ugly performance for Dylan Gabriel. The Steelers defense basically did not what they completely wanted to do, but they did enough to say you have no shot at winning this game, and you're going to have no shot at winning this game. Who I paired Cleveland with? I paired it with the Toronto Maple Leafs, hence the whole droughts continuing thing. And the Browns having just as long of a drought as the Maple Leafs do when it comes to winning a respective championship, actually even longer. And that's rare to say when it comes to sports. When it comes to the Maple Leafs, my thought is pretty simple. What do you do to replace the production and the damage of Mitch Marner? They had to break up the core four. They had to after all those years of pain and just inactivity of getting the conference final and the way their season ended last year. They had to break up the core four in some way. But what do you do, though? How do you replace the top 10 player that is Mitch Marner when it comes to getting those points? Austin Matthews should have another Hart Trophy caliber season, but how do you replace the lack of Marner? And with Toronto in the division that they're in, they should make the playoffs. It's just a matter of how far they'll actually go. New Orleans, not enough guys. Now, that's true for the Saints and the team I paired them with. I'll get to them in a second. When it comes to New Orleans, it's a shame. They keep fighting, they keep finding a way to keep games close. They've only really been blown out once this year, and then they just don't have enough guys to get through the finish line, which is something I can also say for the Edmonton Oilers, who I paired the Saints with. You'll understand why I paired the Saints with the Oilers in a moment. But when it comes to Edmonton, it's back-to-back years of running into a freight train of a team that is very stacked from top to bottom. And the Oilers simply haven't had enough guys. McDavid and Draisaitl could do but so much. And they've done but so much in their time period. It's just when they run into the Panthers, it's running into a brick wall or brick wall Bobrovsky or a really suffocating defense or Brad Marchand being a troll or Sam Reinhart being a troll or Matthew Tkachuk being a troll. You get the idea. The point is, McDavid's staying around for 2 more years, meaning you got 3 more to try to figure this out and get him and Draisaitl a cup as teammates before McDavid can really start to cash in. The clock is ticking, Edmonton. Good luck, boys. Cincinnati. Structure. With the Bengals, and you can kind of put 2 and 2 together with who I picked with them, obviously with Cincinnati, it's a lot of things that just are amiss. Their front office obviously is, but that's by design. Their coaching is kind of a miss, and that's in part because Zach Taylor is not that great of a coach. And without Joe Burrow, he's kind of sort of getting exposed, though to be fair, Joe Burrow's the top 5 quarterback in this league. That's going to kind of happen. I almost wish you would trade Hendrickson and get a King's ransom at the deadline because, let's face it, you're not going to pay him after this season, and he's going to be a free agent. So I almost would rather they trade Trey Hendrickson at this point. And when it comes to Cincy, with Flacco, at least they have a fighting chance in a good amount of these games. I just don't trust their ability to win a lot of these games with just Flacco and not Burrow. It's going to be a very painful few months. As for the team I paired them with, the Ottawa Senators, and you can see why I did this. I like where Ottawa's going. I like their mix of youth and experience. It's obviously Brady Tkachuk and Stützle, and obviously Claude Giroux being one of the experienced dudes, and a good mix throughout the lineup. They're a pretty solid goaltending. They made the playoffs in a good run last year. They just ran into a superior team in the Maple Leafs. I don't know how much longer that may last. If Toronto and Ottawa faced off once again in these playoffs, I don't know how much longer that would last, Toronto being the superior team in Ontario. And Ottawa's got a real shot to at least get to the second round. I wonder if they're able to continue capitalizing on the success they had. Miami, champs and chaos. When it comes to the Dolphins, this is the second straight week of a loss that was completely avoidable. A loss that Tua and the offense really gave the defense to control, and the defense simply couldn't control it. Whether in Carolina's case, it was a long drive that lasted a few minutes, and a 4th and 5 could have stopped all that, or it was 46 seconds in the case of the Chargers game. You win both those games, you're 3-3, and the season's entirely different as opposed to what could be an impending fire sale where Jalen Phillips could be traded or Bradley Chubb could be traded. I don't think they'll trade Jalen Waddle or Devon Achane, but it's on the board, and these teams are going to call. Teams are going to start calling for those 2 guys. And as for the Panthers, not having Sasha Barkov for the full season is going to hurt. Not having Matthew Tkachuk for a few months is also going to hurt, obviously. You have a very good team. You should be in the playoffs still. And I wonder if there's a chance that Sasha Barkov can come back towards the playoffs. I wonder if he'll be ready to roll by its go time. And it's go time to defend your back-to-back Stanley Cup championships. The Panthers are still going to be a dangerous team. And I expect the Panthers who have gone all in over these over this run of trying to win the titles and bring the Cubs back to South Florida. I wonder if they will try to go all in again to reinforce their lineup. One team aggressively buying in Miami, while one team can be aggressively selling. We'll see how that goes. Las Vegas, solid performance. These are words I would say for the Golden Knights as much more than the Raiders, but in the Raiders' case, I will say that what they did against Tennessee was a very good performance. The defense absolutely terrorized Cam Ward. They had 0 shot at defending against him. Ashton Jeanty had a solid game, and McMayer had a solid game, and it was an okay game for Geno Smith, I will say. Nothing spectacular, but he didn't crash the car, which for Geno Smith and the Raiders uniform is probably a very good thing. As for the Golden Knights, they're going to be one of the favorites to win the Cup as long as the health doesn't kill them. They have basically been a favorite to win the Stanley Cup since year 2 of their tenure. That's how good the Golden Knights are. And we know they're able to go all in. And obviously, them getting Mitch Marner is a huge indication of that. They're going to really, I think, challenge and for the President's Trophy, and obviously to bring back Lord Stanley for the second time in 4 years. They were the champions before the Panthers. They could be the champions after them at their expense once again. And Baltimore, evil devil work. What did the Ravens do to have 2 first ballot Hall of Famers on their roster? Like, how many souls did they sell to whatever devils that they may have sold them to? Baltimore has really become worthy of this tier with the way they've played thus far. They have been really weird when it comes to their play calling, especially on offense. They've been really questionable defensively, and though their defense didn't look terrible, at least production wise with the scoring, their offense was awful, and that's probably to be expected without Lamar Jackson. And for some reason, you tried a brotherly shove with Mark Andrews and not Derrick Henry for some reason. That was weird. Anyway, Baltimore season's probably all but done, but they do have a bye week to kind of sort of get somewhat healthy. Maybe Lamar gets back soon. If they don't win their next few games, they're truly cooked. As for the Devils, what cooked them was the similar thing that cooked the Ravens. Injuries, a lot of them. Despite all this, they still made the playoffs. They were no match for the Hurricanes because of their lack of scoring, but they still made the playoffs in what was a really good bounce-back year, I would say, for the Devils. The Hughes brothers have been really good since they've been there, and Heischer's obviously a force when it comes to scoring. And I guess the real question is pretty simple. Can New Jersey stay healthy? If so, they're probably a good team, and they're probably a team that can make a run if things go properly for them. If they can't stay healthy, then your season may go by the ways of last year, and it's probably just going to be a wrap for the Devils in terms of any sort of contention this season. Let's get to the zombie tier games of interest. Dolphins, Browns, and they're going to pretty much be playing in a wind tunnel. As far as I can understand, earlier today I saw there's going to be 50 to 60 mile an hour winds, which pretty much means the run game is going to be very much featured and the game is going to be very much shortened. Miami does not do well against the run. They haven't. They failed miserably against anybody who's had a football running at them consistently. And Judkins has shown themselves to be a very good runner. Miami's defensive line is going to have to do something about that. And when it comes to throwing a football, Cleveland's defense is very good at getting home. At least Myles Garrett is. Myles Garrett versus Patrick Paul, but this time Patrick Paul is going to have a week to prepare for him as opposed to a couple snaps, and then Myles Garrett gave him his rookie orientation. Has Patrick Paul learned anything from said rookie orientation? He'll have to against Myles Garrett, who's probably not happy that he didn't do much of anything last week against the Steelers. And then there's the other side of this with Dylan Gabriel. Can the Dolphins do anything to get home and get pressure? Bradley Chubb has been a good player this year, and Jalen Phillips finally got a sack. Can either of those guys or Chubb Robinson get home? And Chubb Robinson needs to play more, by the way. We'll see what happens with this game. Jalen Waddle versus Denzel Ward's a matchup I'm looking forward to seeing. It should be a really one of those good bad games, I think. And then Panthers-Jets. As you can tell, Carolina's not entitled here in zombie tier either. And Carolina's worthy of not being in zombie tier with the way they've played recently. Carolina's looked good at home. They've also looked miserable on the road. The Jets have looked miserable everywhere, and that's on 2 continents. I guess something has to give, right? Justin Fields is still starting, which I don't recommend, but Justin Fields is still starting. Garrett Wilson is not. Where does Justin Fields throw the ball to if it's a Jet that's trying to catch it? That's something I will need to see because Garrett Wilson's not playing in this game. That's something that we're kind of going to need to see from the Jets and from Justin Fields. For Carolina, you can get over 500 and continue to catch up and keep up with the Falcons, who you've already beaten, and the Bucs, who you see twice. Carolina might not be dead here. Also, Ted McMillan versus Sauce Gardner should be a fun matchup. Let's get to the Birmingham, Alabama Monkey's Paw tier. And another team I didn't think would be out of zombie tier, the New York Giants. Rookie vibes. When it comes to these Giants, hey, I like what I'm seeing from Scatterbo and Jackson Dart. I like what I'm seeing from those two when it comes to running the football. And Dart throwing it. Not bad. It's good stuff. Who knows what would have happened or where the Giants would be if they didn't disastrously crumble against the Saints and have those 5 straight turnovers and the long bomb they gave up to Shaheed. That was also not great. Who knows where the Giants would be? But in any event, I like what I'm seeing from these rookies. I like what I'm seeing from the Giants in total because those guys are getting home. Burns, Carter, Thibodeau, all getting home, in part because Dexter Lawrence's double teams are eating up a lot of the attention, as it should. When it comes to the Rangers, I do wonder about where they're going to be. In theory, they have one of the best goalies on the planet in Shesterkin. They have one of the best goal scorers on the planet in Panarin. And they have a lot of veteran talent, sure. But are they buyers or are they sellers? Are they able to turn what was a disastrous implosion last year and where they missed the playoffs and turn that into a redemption story this year? Or with Mike Sullivan as the new head coach? Or will they continue to crumble and continue to waste what is a very good veteran core? What happens to Mika Zibanejad? Does he get back to the play that he's been accustomed to? Arizona. This is awkward. You already know the team I'm pairing them with. But when it comes to the Cardinals, yeah, their season's probably done after their inability to win close games. They have lost 4 straight of them, all of which by 4 points or less. That's absolutely brutal for a Cardinals team that started out 3-0 and that started out 2-0 and looked okay going into San Francisco. And then we found out, oh, they're not that great. They're possibly not that great. Field goals were made to win several of these games, and then obviously they got down the field at the very end, and though Dre McBride probably was held, I don't think the refs want to determine another game, or at least this one against Indianapolis. Anyway, the Cardinal season might be cooked, and they might have to drop a nuke on a lot of this. It feels like Kyler Murray's clock is ticking, even though Murray had nothing to do with the game in question. We also should probably talk about the Utah Mammoth, which is why this is awkward. The former Arizona Coyotes are really moving into their new home and moving in nicely into the Delta Center, which is going to get renovated, which is super dope. I like that they're actually finally renovating the Delta Center. That's pretty cool and making it more hockey specific. That team could absolutely make the Western playoffs this year. They are pretty talented with a lot of young talented players, with Clayton Keller especially. I like what the Mammoth are doing. I like that they got a new mascot too, which is also quite nice. Could the Tusk be up in April and May for the NHL playoffs? I think it's real possible. I think it's got a real shot at this. Houston, talented but uncertain. The Texans were off last week, so they got a chance to somewhat heal, and I think that's fine. That's pretty cool for the Texans, but I'm a little uncertain still about their offense, and I do need to see them do better. This defense is very good. This defense is going to keep them in a lot of games, but this offense is still a little concerning to me. I just need a little bit more from that unit, from Stroud and from Nico Collins. Well, not necessarily Nico Collins. He's doing his part. But from pretty much everyone else aside from Nico Collins, because everyone else a little shaky to me. I could say a little bit of the same from the Canadiens, where I like what I'm seeing from Hudson, who had a very good rookie year, but can they defend? And can they score enough? Where Cole Caulfield and company, Nick Suzuki and company, can those guys score enough to get the job done and get back to the playoffs like they did last year, where they had a really, really good run? They were just horribly overmatched by a Capitals team that was Alexander Ovechkin scoring many goals and everybody else doing their part around him. No shame in losing that series, Montreal. But can you get back there? Do you have enough defense? Do you have enough scoring to get back to those heights that you guys were at this past year? Time will tell for Montreal in that realm. Dallas, brighter stars. Now, obviously, this is about the Dallas Stars, and this could also be about the offense, where we've got a lot of George Pickens and a lot of Dak Prescott. Both those guys have been excellent. Ferguson's also played really well lately as well. Another week with a touchdown for him, and the Cowboys' offensive unit has been excellent. This defense is still really, really bad, and it's really awful for them to give up the yards they did to Rico Dowdle and have no answer for Ted McMillan and just not be anywhere near good enough to succeed. And that's a real shame because Dak Prescott is keeping this team afloat with his ability and his play and his lack of turnovers. He's doing a good job. Y'all got to help him out, defense. Dallas has plenty of that on the ice, though. The Stars are a really, really good team. They've been to 3 straight conference finals and have been the bridesmaid in the Western Conference, which is the story of Peter DeBoer's career, it seems like, but never the bride. Can the Stars finally break through with a roster that is nasty? Now that they have Mikko Rantanen back for a full year as opposed to half of one. Now they have Jason Robertson back and healthy. Now that they have a really good squad overall with a lot of scoring and a lot of depth. And Jake Ottinger in the net when Peter DeBoer is not secretly trying to hate on this man. I think the Stars are in really, really good shape to make another deep run in the playoffs. But can they finally break through this time? Now to the team that just beat the Cowboys. Carolina, Rico Dowdle's revenge. This revenge tour has been absolutely stupid these last 2 weeks, where he's amassed about 500 yards of offense, and he's been ridiculous. Rico Dowdle has been against the Dolphins and the Cowboys. Both of these are bad defenses, and the Jets are another one that I kind of talked about earlier on, where Carolina, despite their injuries on their offensive line, is getting an excellent performance from him, making life so much easier for Bryce Young and Ted McMillan and Xavier Legette and Horn and Tommy Tremble and the crew that Carolina has in terms of catching passes. They've been a really stable team these last couple weeks, and they've been able to put points up against defenses they're supposed to put points up against. Can they do it on the road this time, where they've had their struggles? And Carolina's looked really bad away from Bank of America Field. That's something that we need to see. We're also going to need to see the Hurricanes, similar to the Dallas Stars, ironically, get over the hump at some point. Sink or swim or fight or flight or whatever the Hurricane term for that would be. Get over the hump, please. Sebastian Aho and Tara Viden and like the whole crew that they got, they're been a really good team. And in the Eastern Conference, I would argue, over the last 5 years, probably the second best team in the East. Unfortunately, the best team in the East has been the team that's beaten them in 2 out of the last 3 conference finals. Get it together, Hurricanes. Can y'all actually get out of the East this time and be in the Stanley Cup final once again? Washington, Ovi and Jaden. When it comes to Jaden, there was no business in them losing last week as well. And they had that game on lock as long as they hold on to the ball. Now, I get it. It was a rainstorm. I understood. But it's still a really unnecessary loss for Washington to take on the football field. They did their part properly, except for stopping DeAndre Swift. And they were good enough to get that done and somehow allowed the Bears not only to win a game by a last-second field goal, but to win a game with a last-second field goal with Jake Moody, who was allergic to kicking field goals through uprights in San Francisco. That is wild to think about, that y'all allowed that to happen. A devastating loss for a Washington team that had no business losing that game. For the Capitals, they didn't lose too many games last year. Well, until they got to the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, at which point they lost a lot of games last year, 4 of them. And it was not a great exit for what was a really good season for a responding Capitals team that needed it. Ovi obviously does Ovi things. And now the all-time goal scorer is got that pressure and that weight lifted off of him where he could just drop bombs from the point from the power play like he is accustomed to. That is his office, by the way. And I think that the Capitals are going to be back in the playoffs in theory, as long as Alex Ovechkin has enough scoring depth around him, because everything else seems to work out relatively well for the Capitals when it comes to their defense, their goaltending. It's not bad. They were just overmatched by a really good Hurricanes team last year when it got to round 2. Minnesota, finally stepping forward. This is something I need to see from both their team on the ice and on the football field. In the case of the football team, they were off last week after a 1-1 trip in overseas in London. And I think the Vikings defense is what I need to see going forward, be the relentless unit that it was against Cincinnati. They're not going to face Jake Browning every week. Don't get it confused. But I do need to see that defense kind of get anywhere close to that. J.J. McCarthy, when you return, and I'm sure you will you be better than Carson Wentz, who has been, I would say, stable? Not terrible, but stable. When it comes to the Wild, you re-signed Kaprizov. You needed to do that. He's really good. but can y'all finally step over the hump? Because it feels like you guys are always on the second tier of Western Conference teams. You're never bad enough to uber tank. You're never good enough to be, oh, you should make the conference finals. That should be your floor. Like, you're never there either. So I just need to know, when it comes to the Minnesota Wild, can you finally get over the hump and finally make a deep run in the Stanley Cup playoffs? You still haven't, and it's been 25 years or so. And Chicago, Caleb and Connor. What I like about the Bears is when they found ways to win, it's because they haven't made too many mistakes, right? They made a couple on Monday. Okay, sure. Caleb threw an in-0 or two. Okay, understood. But they found a way to win based off of punishing Washington for their mistakes. Good. They got a good day from DeAndre Swift when they couldn't get one from DJ Moore. Fine. Roman Dunzee's been their best receiver this year anyway. I get that part. But I like when they're not making mistakes, they're not an awful team. They're not making too many mistakes, I should say. They're not an awful team. And their offensive line seems to hold up relatively well. I just don't know how consistent they can be. And can the Bears take the revenge angle that they had done on Monday and do something with it? Just like Washington did last year. As opposed to the Blackhawks, they're still rebuilding. They have a potential generational talent in Connor Bedard, sure. They could be a decent team in time. They're, I don't think, ready for that life yet. They did put up an 8-piece against the Blues last night, though. That was really impressive. I did watch some of that game, and they were not playing against their rivals in St. Louis. It was not great for them. Let's get to the tier games, the games in this tier. Giants, Broncos, a really good litmus test for New York. As they go to Denver, as Dart faces a really, really good defense, and their offensive line, as we know, is not that great. Denver's offensive line is still decent, but the Giants' pass rush is almost as serious. The Broncos' pass rush is the best in the league right now, and the Giants aren't far behind. 2 elite pass rushes, 2 elite pass rush combos. I'm so looking forward to seeing how that goes over in Denver. That's a big game for the Giants to show how legit you are. Eagles, Vikings. The Eagles are not going to be entitled here. I will get to them in a moment, but when it comes to Minnesota, I want to see where their head's at after the bye. Who's going to be the quarterback? Is it a Carson Wentz reunion, a revenge game? If it's Wentz, if it's McCarthy, has he learned anything from the games that he played this year? And how in the world do the Eagles cover those Viking receivers? Jefferson and Addison and Thielen and now Hawkinson. How do they possibly cover those guys? This could be a fun game, and I think it'd be a lot of points if the Eagles are able to keep up, and if the Vikings are able to, can they blitz Jalen Hurts enough and cause enough chaos and mistakes that Hurts can make? Byron Murphy versus A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, I'm also looking forward to seeing how that goes. Should be a fun game over at the link. Let's get to the Wilmington, Delaware playoff tier. San Francisco, rebuilding and replacing. When it comes to the Niners, we're obviously the latter word that started with R. And losing Fred Warner is heartbreaking. I really love watching him play. He's a tremendous linebacker, whether it's in coverage, whether it's blitzing, whether it's tackling. This is the best middle linebacker in the game, and it's just a spectacular player. It's so heartbreaking to see that his season ended with a broken ankle. And now the Niners defense has lost everybody they couldn't afford to lose except for CMC, and I'm hoping they don't lose CMC as I knock on some wood here. It's just awful to see how bad the Niners injuries have hurt them, and yet they're still 4-2, which is a really good testament to how good of a coach Kyle Shanahan is to get them boys right, whether they're backups or starters when they're fully healthy. Matt Jones did take a beating, though. That was also not great. We're going to need to see Matt Jones not take a beating like that. And for the Sharks, they continue to rebuild. With Celebrini and Smith and Misa, they're going to continue to rebuild, but they're going to be a fun team to watch in, I would say, a year and a half. And it would not surprise me if the Sharks made the 2028 NHL playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs, because of the young offensive talent that they have currently on the ice. I like seeing games in the Shark Tank. That's a fun game. That's a fun atmosphere to watch games be played at. I want to see if the Sharks can bring that fun and the excitement and enthusiasm back to the Shark Tanks in due time. Jacksonville, issues to fix. There are some here. When Trevor Lawrence has been tasked to win some games, except for Kansas City, it hasn't gone that well. That was a winnable game against Seattle, and unfortunately for him, they just couldn't find a way to. Seattle clamped up on defense enough in the fourth quarter, especially to get the job done and bring it to the finish line, but it felt like this was a winnable game for a Jacksonville team that kind of sort of needed it to keep up with Indianapolis. They should be fine because the AFC is basically a mosh pit right now, but that was a winnable game for Jacksonville. And when it comes to Vancouver, there are issues to fix here too. Did they fix them with all the infighting and the strife that they had? And can they deal with that properly? Elias Pettersson, can he get to be a 40-goal scorer and be the guy that we've seen him be? Thatcher Demko, can he be the goaltender that we've been used to seeing, where he was high tier, especially when it came to that bubble year, where he was absolute menace in net? Can Vancouver, and a couple years ago for that matter, Vancouver made that run to the second game of the conference finals, a game away from the conference final against Edmonton. Can Vancouver get back to that somehow? I do want to see where the Canucks are and how close the Canucks can be to that realm. Buffalo, Pegula Payne. Obviously, Terry Pegula and Kim Pegula, too. They own both those teams. And when it comes to the Bills, I don't love what I'm seeing from them. And this is a neutral fan, I guess, perspective. Obviously, I'm a rival fan, but a neutral fan perspective. They have looked sluggish in almost all of their games at various points. They have not played a complete game at all this season. And they survived and escaped against New Orleans and Miami. They were not so lucky against New England and Atlanta. Two other, it's kind of ironic that that's the way that worked out with the two rival teams they beat, two rival teams they didn't beat when it comes to their perspectives. But in any event, Josh Allen continues to do what he does, though he's making a little bit more mistakes now. And Buffalo's run defense is absolutely hideous. Atlanta absolutely buried them when it came to the run game. And Drake London did his part too, but they could not stop the run. And it's this one thing I've learned here. If you have a physical run game and you're playing the Bills, you can rack up 2 Bills on their run defense. Not great. Not great at all. As for the Sabres, they have talent. They always seem to have talent. They always seem to know what they're doing when it comes to drafting. They're good at it. They might have the Norris Trophy winner. It's a really nice team. Rasmus Dahlin I'm talking about. It's a really nice team. And Tage Thompson is shown himself to be an excellent dynamic scorer. It's just, they seem to have really good starts, and then they crater hard, and then they're in the draft lottery all over again with no real prospects of making the playoffs. They've got the longest drought in the NHL, and fun fact, I was actually at their last playoff game. It was Game 7 against the Flyers in 2011. I was there. I was actually an intern at the Spectacor Foundation, and I was at that game, and it was bad for the Sabres. They were under siege pretty much from the word go, and the fact that it was only 5-1 shows how good of a goalie Ryan Miller was at his prime. The fact that that's the last playoff game that Buffalo has actually played in on the ice is pretty brutal. Can the Sabres get anywhere close to that? We'll need to know, and we'll need to know fast. New England, fighting Bears. That's what it feels like when it comes to playing the Patriots. It feels like you're fighting a bear because they are tough and tenacious, and they are a physical team that knows what they're doing. They are well coached, obviously. Drake May is not making anywhere near the mistakes, and there is no sophomore slump. In fact, of all the sophomore quarterbacks, he's been the best of them thus far. He's had a very good season as he continues to break out. That roster still isn't great, but that's the scary part about this Patriots team. It's not a great roster, and yet they're still where they are, and they're leading the AFC East right now. That's an impressive feat for a Patriots team that was down really bad, I would say 20 months ago. That's a really impressive thing. And what a change in that time period things can make. Because remember what happened? The 2023 we're talking? Boston had the greatest season, Boston had the greatest season we'd ever seen when it came to the regular seasons. And then they found a way to lose and blow a 3-1 lead to the Florida Panthers. Oh, what would have happened if Brad Marchand had buried that breakaway goal to win Game 5 of that series? Oh, how different the world might have been. Well, maybe it's the Bruins that would have won that Stanley Cup. Maybe it's the Bruins that wouldn't have sold at the deadline the way they did and trading away Marchand to said Panthers who won said cup. Well, second one. The Bruins aren't close to the playoffs, one would think. And obviously David Pastrnak's going to put in a bunch of goals, but will they get enough help? And will there be enough defense and goaltending to help them? Boston had a disastrous year last year, and it just doesn't feel like they have enough depth to get back to where they need to be. Atlanta, Firebirds. You can understand why I picked this. For the Falcons, that was a really impressive performance. And they're second in primetime football where they've played another decent team and they've handled their business well. And they looked really good in terms of blitzing Josh Allen. They looked really good in terms of running the ball down Buffalo's throats. They looked pretty good at forcing turnovers. And the secondary has been very impressive thus far. It's been a really good start for the Falcons season, I will say. And I would like to think that they can keep this going because they're not falconing too much. They've only looked awful against Carolina. Aside from that, they've looked like a respectable team. They could be a playoff team. They've got another game with Tampa Bay later on where they can get their revenge. I want to see if they do. When it comes to the Flames, though, that was a very good team that missed the playoffs somehow. That was a very good team that had 90-plus points and found a way not to make it. They could win a game or two or find a way to not go to overtime as much and figure it out, I think, to make the postseason again. I do want to see another Battle of Alberta because that would be fun. Similar to how Saints and Falcons games are. You can understand why I picked them as they were. And the fact that the Flames used to play in Atlanta. That was also a thing. But we ain't talking about that right now. What we are talking about is how Calgary has done its job and done its job well over the last couple of years. Just nothing to show for it but a gentleman's sweep by the Oilers in the playoffs. Kind of get back there and try to get their lick back against Connor McDavid and his crew. Philadelphia, not flying high. With the Eagles, it's not great at all. Jalen Hurts does not look good. Saquon Barkley's not getting the ball, which is alarming. The receivers are kind of in a mutiny stage of what are we doing here? The play calling has been bad on offense. The defense is doing what it can. It's just a little undermanned when it comes to the pass rush and the secondary. It's just not there. The Georgia boys are doing their part. They just don't have enough around them, unfortunately. And I don't know where that comes from unless they make another bold move at the deadline, which we know Harry Roseman to do. Can they get some pass rush? There will be some bad teams that have pass rushers. The price is going to be high, though. Are you willing to pay it? When it comes to the Flyers, though, a lot of people would peg them for being the worst team in the league and or the team that's going to get Kevin McKenna. As a Flyers fan, I'm okay with this. But what I want to see from the Flyers is continued growth from Jet Luchenko and in his rookie year, a full-on rookie year, and especially continued growth in year two from Matvei Michkov. And Trevor Zegras, who I think made the best pass of any Philadelphian this month, with a spectacular pass to Sean Couturier. The Flyers actually do have pretty good forward talent. There's no, I don't think much disputing that. They've got decent forward talent if Sean Couturier can stay healthy, and health doesn't really bite them like it has in years past. Like I like Forrester and I like Tippett. There's decent health here. The question is pretty simple. That defense and that goaltending, it's not great. It's been okay thus far. Vildar's been pretty good. Harrison's been okay. It's been okay thus far. They played their games against, I think, the two best teams in the Eastern Conference, Florida and Carolina, when they're fully healthy. Can it hold up for another 79 games at a respectable clip? If so, maybe the Flyers won't get Gavin McKenna. Although I would kind of like to see the Flyers get Gavin McKenna. That would also be pretty good. Have you seen him at Penn State? That bull is a monster. Another team that could get McKenna, Pittsburgh. Generational talents. They have them all over the place in that city. They tend to do that. Never mind Paul Skeens. But we'll talk about the Steelers and eventually Penguins here. TJ Watt continuing to do TJ Watt things. And he's getting help on defense. Aaron Rodgers is getting back to the Aaron Rodgers that we're accustomed to seeing. Where he's not MVP Rodgers, but he's good enough Rodgers. And with this division as bad as it is, the Steelers could absolutely win 12 or 13 games this year, and it won't look like a fluke. Because this division is bad around them. Where in the span of the last couple weeks, the fact that they're 2-9 and the Steelers have the 2, it's not pretty. Tonight they play the Bengals, which should make for another win. Unless they Steeler for some reason, because they tend to lose games they're not supposed to. As for the Penguins, They have generational talents as well, and Crosby and Malkin, sure. But what else do you have? Like, what else is around you? Are you selling again? You've obviously got the regime change, which you needed because the Sullivan era just wasn't working anymore. What do you do if you're Pittsburgh, where you've lucked into Crosby and Malkin, and now you guys are just kind of there? Is there a world where they trade Sidney Crosby? That's not a sentence that most Pittsburghians would probably want to make, but it's a question that I have. Is there a world where they trade Sidney Crosby and uber sell at the deadline, knowing that Evgeny Malkin could be gone after this year too? Is that possible? And the LA Chargers, two great coaches. I'll get to the other one in a second, but the first one obviously being Jim Harbaugh, who somehow got it together enough with this Charger team to steal a game in Miami that they probably shouldn't have. They've stolen a couple of games this year they probably shouldn't have. The Miami game I just mentioned, Denver a couple weeks ago, they've stolen some games they probably would have them in a lot more trouble than they currently are, considering the injury issues that they have, where, let's face it, it's not great. A competent defensive line, or at least a defensive line that knows what they're doing, probably would have caused more damage against Herbert than what the Dolphins did. And when it comes to the run game, Vidal, very impressive performance. Keenan Allen and Ladd McConkey. McConkey did very well on Sunday. Very good stuff there. The Chargers are going to need to get healthy ASAP, and if they can, they'll be okay. But if not, maybe it's in trouble and Kansas City could catch them as they get their lick back later on this year, potentially. As for Joe Quenneville and Anaheim with the Ducks, they finally traded John Gibson. Good. They have a decent young core, I guess, maybe, but they need a couple more years to figure everything out because there's still much more work to do in Anaheim. Does Quenneville still got it? I would argue probably, but I don't think he has enough horses, or in this case, enough ducks, to get back to the postseason. Let's get to the playoff tier games. Commanders, Cowboys, points. I'm expecting a lot of them. If the over-under is somewhere in the 50s, I'm absolutely taking the over. These are two very good offenses, and the Commanders have a meh defense. The Cowboys have an awful one. I'm expecting a lot of points here. This should be a very fun game. How in the world does Washington cover George Pickens? They haven't figured it out at all thus far, and I need to see how that works. And when it comes to how they could stop Javonte Williams, Carolina did a very good job of that. Well, Derek Brown is really good at that. Can Washington figure out how to stop Javonte Williams, who, aside from that game I just mentioned, has been really good in Dallas, as he's pretty much the full lead guy, as he should be right now. And conversely, can Dallas put any sort of resistance against him? That'll be something I will need to know from the Cowboys' point of view. Rams, Jaguars, the second game of the week over in London. That's going to be a really fun matchup. Will Puka Nacua play? And I'll get to the Rams in a little bit. Will Puka Nacua play? A big game for both these teams. I will need to see that. And if he doesn't play Nacua, where do they get their offense from? Where do they get the rest of their offensive scoring and production from? I will need to see how that works. And when it comes to Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence, I kind of got to have it game, especially to keep up with Indianapolis, who I'll talk about obviously in a moment. Can you get it? And for the Rams, to keep up in a really good NFC West, are y'all able to go get it? This is a big game for both these teams, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in London. Let's go to the New York City titles here. Kansas City, Blue Rice. When it comes to Rashee Rice returning, it's another weapon for Pat Mahomes, as he has played really well over the last couple of weeks. In two big stage games against Baltimore and against Detroit, the Chiefs have absolutely lit up the skies. Mahomes has done a whole lot of damage in these two games. And now you're going to get your best receiver back in Rashee Rice to go with Worthy and Hollywood Brown. And Kelsey's played relatively well. And now Pacheco's running it at a decent clip with Kareem Hunt. Kansas City's offensive line's okay. Will Simmons be healthy? Because that's kind of a big deal for the left side of the offensive line. They somehow got away with committing no penalties with Mr. False Start starting and playing every snap of that game. That's a little weird. Anyway, Kansas City is figuring things out, and that's scary for everybody else. Maybe the scariest 3-3 team in NFL history. I don't think that's not just me saying it, but it's probably a lot of people saying it. Not in the Becky Lynch way, but just a lot of people saying it. As for the Blues, last night was bad, as I mentioned, but St. Louis should be okay. I don't know if they're a playoff team per se, but I think they're going to fight to the very end to make said playoffs. I like what Jordan Binnington. I like some of the guys on that team, but I don't know if they have enough to make the postseason. That's something that I'm kind of sort of intrigued by. Seattle, cracking your QBs, which is what they did to Trevor Lawrence last week, and that was a very painful experience for him and for a decent amount of that Jaguar offense. The Seattle defense has really showed its muscle against most teams, not Tampa Bay, but most teams have really succumbed to what Mike McDonald and his crew have been able to do. I like where Seattle's going. They look like a legitimately real team and could absolutely win 10 games again, if not more than that. As for the Kraken, it's clear to see that the first year was a fluke, and I don't know if they're anywhere close to the playoffs this year, though I do want to see if Shane Wright can turn the corner and really take another step forward. I like what Jordan Eberle has been for them. I think he's been a very good veteran leader for that team. They've got some decent pieces, Brandon Montour as well, but I just don't think Seattle has enough to get through what is a pretty good Western Conference, a pretty deep Western Conference, I should say. In time, the Kraken will be back in the playoffs. I just don't think their time is now. LA Rams, losing King Puka. It's on the board that he's out for this week and maybe further with the ankle injury. I don't know if he plays. It's not looking good for that. And I think that's going to be a really interesting test for the Rams, who have okay weapons aside from him. This means that Devontae Adams is going to be wide receiver 1 for a while, and maybe they get some help from Tutu Atwell. But it's a real devastating loss for a guy in Nakua who was terrorizing the NFL pretty much from the word go. And as for the LA Kings, the team that's terrorized them is the Edmonton Oilers. And we've seen this, for 4 straight years now? They faced off in the first round, and for 4 straight years now, Edmonton has shown them the door in 5 or 6 games. It's been devastating. Maybe not any more so than last year, where Edmonton was down 2-0 and then somehow won 4 straight, including a killer Game 5 loss. That was not great for LA Kings. If they face Edmonton again in the postseason, and I think they're good enough to get back there, LA, this is the swan song for Anze Kopitar, can they find a way to get that done? I like some of their young talent too, but can they really send Anze Kopitar out in a blaze of glory, as he's had a really good career? Obviously, we'll get his number retired in Los Angeles, and I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer, but I do think with 2 cups, and he's been a really good leader for a decade plus in LA, I do wonder if he'll get consideration, or how much consideration he'll get for the Hockey Hall of Fame. Detroit, best laid Yzer plan. The Yzer plan hasn't worked out for the Red Wings, but I'll get to that in a second. When it comes to the Lions, the best laid plans of Tyson men often go awry, right? And in this case, this one kind of went awry when it came to that really ingenious play to get Jared Goff a receiving touchdown. It just didn't work out the way that they intended it to. And when it comes to the Lions, they've only been shown the door twice, and that's by the 2, I would say, best defenses they played thus far. In Kansas City and Green Bay have kind of shown them the door. When it comes to everybody else they played, they've handled them, and they've slaughtered them, and they've dominated them, especially through the AFC North, because, yikes, that division is bad. But against the better defenses, they have not looked great, which is a little disappointing. Well, except for Cleveland. They did well against Cleveland. But they have not looked great against the defenses that they played on the road, the best defenses in that realm. They will see Pittsburgh at some point this year, and that'll be a really fun matchup with another pretty good defense and another enemy in Aaron Rodgers. As for the Red Wings, the Yzer plan just has not worked out for some reason. Decent talent. They almost made the playoffs a couple years ago. They were a couple points off from that, but it just doesn't feel like they're going to get there under this regime. I just don't know how much they can possibly do to figure it out and to get this done. Does Yzerman have a clock ticking against him? Green Bay, true North leaders. Thus far, they have been the most, at least, stable team. I can say that because they played Detroit and they beat them head up, so I'll give Green Bay the nod there. The Packer defense got back to what we kind of expected them to be against the Bengals. Now, obviously, it's against Cincinnati, so sure, but they've at least got back to that to some realm and to some degree. That was nice to see. We'll need to see how to get some better competition, even though they beat the Commanders earlier this year, and that was a good game for that unit. What will Green Bay do against the Cardinals, whether Kyler Murray plays or not? Interesting question there. As for Winnipeg, the team that won the President's Trophy last year, they ran into a buzzsaw in Dallas in round 2, and they got a really good squad, obviously. Connor Hellebuck is arguably the best goalie on the planet. He had a tremendous season last year. He won the Vezina. I do wonder, though, how much time do they have left at this contending window? How much time do they have left as a team that can make a deep run? Can they still do that? I just need to know from Scheifele and company in front of Hellebuck, and can Hellebuck be reliable enough in the playoffs to help them get another deep run in? Something I would need to see from the Winnipeg Jets and the True North. I do love their whiteouts, though. I would love to go to one at some point. Tampa Bay, lightning strikes. That's been the story of Baker Mayfield's season, right? Where they can score from anywhere and any time on anyone. That's just the way they do business. And it hasn't mattered whether it's been either of the Johnsons, whether it's been Mike Evans or Chris Godwin or Bucky Irving or Rashad White or Kate Otten. It has not mattered. Baker Mayfield has absolutely scorched people with the quick lightning strikes. And obviously your lead has not been safe. Now, the Niners didn't have to go through that because the Niners didn't have the lead late. They didn't have to have it because Tampa Bay didn't allow them to. Their defensive line punished Mac Jones and punished them severely. It was quite wild to see that. And for Tampa Bay, how much more can they deal with injury-wise? And if and when they get healthy, how much more dangerous will they possibly be? They look like a real Super Bowl contender, and Baker Mayfield looks like the MVP thus far. Can anyone take the MVP part away from Mayfield, though? And for the Lightning, still really good, a very talented team with great players from Hedman and Vasilevsky and Kucherov and Braden Point and a bunch of talent. They're really good there, obviously. Can they get there? Can these war horses, if you will, get to the playoffs in one piece? They ran into a machine in the Florida Panthers the last 2 years and have shown them the door promptly and abruptly. Those have been fun Sunshine State battles in the playoffs over the last 4 to 5 years or so. If they have another one, are they going to be equipped enough to deal with it? Denver, Makar and Benito. These might be your two best defensive players thus far. Benito in the NFL, Makar in the NHL. Makar's already won a Norris. Benito can absolutely win Defensive Player of the Year for a Broncos team that has been terrorizing quarterbacks for the most part the entire season. They have looked very impressive on the defensive front. Obviously, PS2, who won Defensive Player of the Year last year, could see his teammate win it this year, and they keep moving forward with the way they should. It's just a generally good unit on that front. Offensively, they're not overly imposing, but they're good enough. And though last Sunday was ugly in London, they were at least good enough to deal with a Jets team that was continuing to trip over themselves. It was just not great on their part. Anyway, when it comes to the Avalanche, McKinnon and Makar are two top 5 players, as we know. Gabe Landeskog being healthy generally helps. Can Nietzsche do what Rantanen did for Dallas? Can they figure that out? Because that's going to be a relatively big deal. Mackenzie Blackwood, good goaltender. Can he keep them afloat when they need him in the playoffs? Because they're going to need him when they get there. Colorado's a real team that's got a real shot at another cup. Is it possible that they get their second in 5 years? Because they're good enough to do it. They just ran into buzzsaw in the Dallas Stars last year in round 1 of the playoffs in what felt like a conference final series. That was such a fun battle between Colorado and Dallas. But one of the teams to beat the Broncos this year, the Colts. Colts and Cannons. Indianapolis has looked really good offensively. Now, their defense didn't look all that great against the Cardinals in former Colt Jacoby Brissett for some reason. That was kind of weird. But they figured it out just enough to get the job done. Good work. I like what I'm seeing from them when it comes to the offense. Jonathan Taylor doing his part is obviously throwing his hat in the ring for the Offensive Player of the Year honors because he has been worthy of such an award thus far. Tyler Warren's played well, and the receiving corps has been relatively respectable. I like what I'm seeing from Indianapolis. Daniel Jones, comeback player of the year worthy stuff. It's really good performances from Indianapolis' offense. Their defense has been okay, not overly overpowering, but good enough. They're a good enough defense. They do get home when they can. They're just not proficient at causing enough pressure. And for Columbus, they were a really fun story last year in the sense of their playing for Johnny Gaudreau. That was a really good story to see play out the way it did. They just couldn't finish. And they were just a couple points shy of making the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's a shame that they missed them. And I think that they could absolutely get there if they played with that kind of passion and intensity like they did last year. Can Columbus make another postseason run? We will see. I think they are in play too. Let's get to the title tier games, and we're going to stay with Indianapolis as they go back to Los Angeles and play against the Chargers. They've lost once at SoFi Stadium this year. Can they figure out a way to prevent a second loss? Can their pass rush get home enough against Justin Herbert when their pass rush hasn't been overly electrifying, no pun intended, but it's good enough, if you will? How does the Chargers' run defense deal with Jonathan Taylor? Another thing I would like to see. And Daniel Jones against the Charger defense, which obviously has injuries of its own. Can they get home? And can they do what they need to do to get out of SoFi 1-1? And if A.D. Mitchell plays, can he redeem himself for the errors that he made the last time he was at SoFi? And, of course, your main event this week. Bucks, Lions, a showdown and potential NFC Championship preview, because let's face it, these are two of your three best teams in conference. I love what this game could be on Monday night. This game could be a lot of scoring and a lot of points in Detroit's den. Baker with all the weapons he has, and Jared Goff with all the weapons he has, and Tampa Bay and their run defense and their defensive line versus Detroit's really good offensive line, and obviously Sonic and Knuckles. A showdown, and I am much looking forward to seeing Amon-Ra St. Brown, and if I hope Emeka Egbuka plays, because if he does, that'll be fun to see and compare and contrast. And Baker's done it with so many different people in that cast of characters. I want to see if Detroit can stop it with their secondary. I'm expecting a lot of points in this game. This could be a really fun preview of the NFC Championship. So there you have it, a preview of the 32 teams in the NHL and a look at the 32 teams in the NFL. You already know the drill by now. The picks are coming later today. I will talk about all the games in the NFL as we go. Steelers-Bengals, you're going to be the first stop of my next train of thought for the Railway Recap.